So today we're going to be taking a look at BODYCAM. Now, for those who don't know or maybe haven't come across BODYCAM before, it was released in 2024 in early access on Steam by a small independent developer. And it immediately stood out from the crowds within the first-person shooter genre. And that's not because they have reinvented the first-person shooter by any means. It's more about how they've chosen to present it. So BODYCAM, essentially, is a first-person shooter told entirely from the perspective of a body-worn camera. So it's raw, it's unfiltered, and it can be unsettling at times. But as I said, it was in 2024, early access. We're now in 2026, and it's still in early access. So the question is simply, has it evolved? Has it improved? And most importantly, is it worth taking a look at? So let's dive in and see what it's all about. So first impressions, jumping back in. Now, the menus, they're fairly simplistic. You won't find layers of complex settings or flashy animations. It's clean, it's minimal, it's functional, and it's kind of no distractions, no nonsense style menu. So it's fairly straightforward to kind of get around. Now, back in 2024, there were a couple of kind of issues. One major hurdle was performance. Now, back then, you did need a fairly punchy PC to run the game smoothly. Frame drops were fairly common, and you had a lot of screen stutter, which effectively affected the atmosphere of the game. But credit where it's due, the developers have worked on this. They've done a lot of optimization. So performance has improved, resource usage has been reduced, and it now runs more than comfortably on mid-spec machines. Now, it's not perfect, but it is a lot better than it was. So kudos to the developers on that front. Now, in terms of game modes, the core offerings are fairly familiar, as you would expect with it being a first-person shooter. You have things such as team deathmatch, zombies, hardpoint, gun game, but nothing out of the ordinary, nothing experimental, nothing groundbreaking, and that's fine because the uniqueness of BODYCAM doesn't come from the game modes itself. It comes from how it feels to play. So from a gameplay perspective, what is the game like? So first things first, it is not Call of Duty by any stretch of the imagination. It's not twitchy slide cancelling chaos with omni movement and wall running, etc. BODYCAM is a lot slower, a lot more deliberate, more tactical. So what we mean by that is every footstep matters, every corner that you go around matters, every sound that you make matters. Like, if you go sprinting endlessly across the map, you give your position away and you'll be taken out instantly. Now, and given the way that the game is portrayed, the perspective with it being from a body-worn camera, your awareness feels very, very different compared to a normal first-person shooter. So gunshots aren't just sounds, they're very concussive, they're disorientating. If a round cracks past your head, your character will flinch, and ultimately it has to compose themselves again and re-steady themselves to get to kind of carry on with the game. Now, that small mechanic alone changes how you play the game. So it forces you to respect the engagements that you come across. So you're not just going to go all guns blazing straight away. So from a gameplay perspective, it really offers something different to other shooters on the market at the moment. Now, visually, the game is really, really impressive. So the way the game looks and feels, it really sets it apart from other games. Now, the lighting system, so light constantly shifts. So depending on what route you're taking around the map, the shadows, day turns to night, night fades into early morning haze. And when the darkness falls, BODYCAM becomes something completely different to anything you'd have kind of experienced anywhere else. So flashlights, they'll cut through windows, they'll cut through shadows. Street lights will flicker. And the rooms and the maps, they feel very, very claustrophobic at times. And it borders on horror. It borders on theme for a horror movie. So it can really kind of make you jump out of your seat at times. It can scare the shit out of you at times. And the maps themselves, they're very, very well crafted. So even though they're not big, they're not massive maps, they're all fairly small. They're all very, very well done. They're very detailed and they do look superb. Now we move on to the real game changer of BODYCAM, and that's the sound. The sound design on this game is something I have never experienced. It is incredible. So this is where BODYCAM really, really excels. They've absolutely nailed it. Every gunshot echoes differently depending on the space you're in. Kind of if you're in woods, if you're in a house, if you're in kind of a concrete room, depending on the gun you're using as well. So concrete corridors reverberate, open streets crack sharply, the glass on the floor, the bullets hitting the floor with like precision, glass crunching underneath your boots. it really adds to the immersion, especially on the night maps. On the night maps, the sound of the game isn't just a sound effect, it is the gameplay. You heavily rely on the noises around you when it's dark, because you really can't see much, so you rely on that noise and that sound. So from a sound perspective, I think they've got this absolutely spot on. I think it's one of the best sounding games I think I've ever come across, so kudos to the developers on that front. So let's move on to the not so positives and look at some of the negatives. So here are the negatives. Now, it's not all roses with BODYCAM. So after an hour or so of playing, you'll start to notice something. And that is that the game modes, they start to begin to blur together. So team deathmatch will feel just like you're playing hardpoint. Gun game will feel like you're playing team deathmatch. And I think because the maps are on the smaller side, there's only so much variety that you can get in how the engagements unfold. Now, I know there is a new larger map in development set in a forest in France, which, first glance, it does look quite interesting. But as of now, the overall experience, it does start to feel fairly repetitive after an hour or so of playing. And I think that's dangerous for a multiplayer game, especially focused around such a crowded market within the first-person shooter genre. I think that repetitiveness and that lack of variety, I think, could really hurt the game. From a pricing perspective, the price sits at around £30 at the moment, and it is still in early access. So I think that is quite a large sum, especially for a game that is still evolving and isn't content rich. And all of the additional guns and marketplace items carry their own costs, and they're not cheap. So it may put a lot of people off. So I would recommend waiting for this to become into like a Steam sale, for example. I think if it was more in the line of £15-20, I think that would be good value for money. But yeah, from a variety and price perspective, I think hold off. I think the money's best spent elsewhere. Now, those negatives, I think that's the most frustrating part about it, because I think the foundation is there for this to be a brilliant game. The immersion, the audio, the atmosphere, the level of realism. But I can't help but feel that it's missing something vital. I just think, what would this game be like on a bigger environment with longer engagements, maybe a PvP or PvE style kind of game mode with extraction style objectives? Because they clearly know how to build a good map. Every map they've put out there, it proves that. But there's nothing like that on the roadmap at the moment. Just there's more small maps and one large map, all are focused around that team deathmatch. And I don't think that's going to be enough to keep the game going. So from a final verdict perspective, I think where does it leave us? I think the question we asked ourselves at the start of this was, has the game improved? And I think the short answer is yes, it has. I think they've fixed the stability issues. So I'll give the game a 7 out of 10, and I think that scoring is strongly kind of made up from the sound and the visuals, because in those areas I think it's punching well above its weight. But in terms of longevity at the moment and variety, content depth, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. The potential's there, it's just the question is, can the developers fulfill it? So for now, I think BODYCAM remains one of the most immersive first-person shooter experiences available, but I don't think the immersion alone can carry the game forever. So it'd be interesting to see where the game stands at the end of 2026, going into 2027. So, but for now, thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this review, hit that like button, and do hit subscribe. It would mean the world to me. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks all.